Chairman Duffy.
Chairs present as well. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you new to our proceedings, the purpose of this board is to hear evidence on applications for variances from our zoning ordinance and on applications for special use. Based upon the evidence we hear this evening, we will make a recommendation to the Village Board of Trustees as to whether the applications that come before us this evening should be granted or denied. We will vote to recommend granting or denying each application for variation based on whether the application meets the standards of review set forth in Section 5.4.f of our village ordinance. Applications for special use will be considered based upon whether the standards of review set forth in Section 5.3.e of our village ordinance are met. The Village Board of Trustees will consider the recommendations we make this evening at their next regularly scheduled meeting on September 25th. Our recommendations to the board are advisory only. The Village Board has the final say on all applications and will make its own determination as to whether to grant or deny them. The Village Board is not legally bound by our recommendations. There's one small exception to this rule. If this board makes a negative recommendation with respect to an application, in order for the Village Board of Trustees to approve that application, a supermajority of 5 Village Board members must vote to approve it, rather than a simple majority of 4. There's one other small peculiarity to our proceedings, of which you should be aware. This board does not operate by majority vote. We operate instead by a tyranny of 4. In other words, no matter how many board members are present on a given evening, in order to get a positive recommendation from this board, an application must receive 4 affirmative votes. Ordinarily, this board consists of 7 members. Tonight, however, due to an absence, there are 6 members present. Ms. Roberts, as Assistant Director of Community Development, sits with us tonight in an advisory capacity only and is not a voting member of the board. Please be aware, therefore, that a vote of 3 to 3 will technically go into the record as a negative recommendation with the legal effect that I previously described. In recognition of this unusual feature of our procedure, when we do not have all members of the board present on a given evening, we give the applicants who are scheduled to come before us that night the option of requesting a continuance to the next available date on our schedule. The next available date for any applicant who would like to request a continuance this evening is September 26th. There's no penalty for asking for a continuance. No such request will be held against you when your case is eventually heard. If you wish to ask for a continuance, however, you must do so at the beginning of your presentation before making any substantive arguments as to the merits of your case. Please also be aware that if you request a continuance, there's no guarantee as to how many board members will be present on the evening to which your case is continued. The cases we shall hear this evening will be heard in the order set forth on the pre-printed agenda located on the table near the door where you first came in. When your case is called, please proceed to the podium, state your name and address, and tell us exactly why your application meets the standards of review that are applicable to it. Each member of this board is a longtime resident of the village and has visited your property during the past week. In addition, we have received from village staff these green booklets containing all written information that you have submitted in support of your application, as well as any other correspondence that the village has received. Accordingly, it is not necessary that you repeat what you have already stated in writing. Please just hit the high points with particular attention to why you believe your application meets the standards of review. After the applicant has had a chance to speak, we'll open the podium to others who wish to speak either for or against the application. Everyone will be permitted to have their say, though we would ask that you keep your comments as short and to the point as possible. After we have heard all oral presentations, I'll close the evidence and members of the board will discuss what they have heard and take a vote. Once the evidence is closed, no further testimony on an application may be offered. The only people entitled to speak during that part of the proceeding will be the members of the board. This meeting is a legal proceeding and all testimony tonight must be given under oath. If you're here and planning to testify tonight, I would ask that you raise your right hand at this time and be sworn. Do you swear or affirm that you will tell the truth in the testimony that you are about to give? If so, please say, I do. Thank you very much. Ms. Roberts, will you please call our first case this evening?
Our first case is 2018 C39, 1004 Ashland Avenue. This is a request for a 6.5-foot side yard adjoining a street setback variation to permit the replacement and modification of the existing side yard stoop and steps on the legal non-conforming structure.
Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bill Hart. This is my wife, Diane Hart.
Hi, welcome.
We've been in our home for 31 years. And
This month?
This month. The stairs that we're asking to replace are in somewhat disrepair as the concrete over 100 years is now sagging and creating rough edges that people trip over. The stairs are non-conforming to the current rules and are too narrow for people's feet. So we've had, as we get older, so do our guests, and some of them trip down the stairs. And secondarily, there's a second set of stairs which causes them to trip because it's either not lit well enough, even though we put lights there. And then there's another set of stairs right at the fence, which they also trip over. So we are trying to make this a safer situation for guests coming and going, whether it be the postman or the guests that we have into our home. The primary issue is safety. We're trying to widen the stairs a little bit and the top right at the door, because people try to open the door and they push themselves off the steps, step back, and then fall. That's not a good situation. And I guess lastly, I would say that our house, it says side yard, but our house faces 10th Street, so it's really our front door, and there's an extra wide parkway there as well, so 25 plus feet from the fence to the gate, so there's no interruption to neighbors' visibility or any issues like that. And then those are the main reasons, and everything else is already written here, so I won't be short. I'll just be short and sweet in this. If my wife has anything to add.
This really just came about because, as Bill said, we've had trouble with guests and as we have gotten older. And so I really am concerned about it. And trick-or-treaters, it sounds silly, but they're always having to step back for us to open the door for them, and I'm always worried about the little kids. So it's mostly safety, and the concrete's pretty cracked. If you've been out there to see it, it needs repair.
So, one thing I noticed, the stairs are a little bit steep.
Yes.
Leading up to this. So,
Very.
so it looks like you're going to stretch them further out into that side yard. Now, the one thing that I wasn't quite clear on is it sounds like what you're doing is you're eliminating those two additional steps, the one by the fence and the one, and so that the front, from the stairs will, then the sidewalk will slant and then come equal with the sidewalk passing in front of your house?
No, it's still going to be set back by about 7 or 8 feet. It's just that it will take it out to where the current second set of stairs are.
Yeah.
And then there's,
this schematic is the best one to look at for that.
But is there still an end step at the gate?
No.
Right.
No.
Taking
yeah,
that
we're
out-
trying to get out.
Taking
Right.
that out as well, so
Right.
that there's no other steps, and they can hold the railings and go up, and they'll know what to expect.
Right. All right. Are there any other questions for our applicant?
Just a comment. You said the stair was getting wider. I think you meant the step itself is
Yeah.
getting
The step
deeper.
is deeper.
The stair is no
Deeper.
wider.
It's
It's really
set
the
by
same
here.
width
That's correct.
as what you
It's
have here. Just
Depth of the stair and the height of the stair
That's
combined made it a
what
very
the
steep.
drawings show. I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure if anybody was, all the people watching on TV, they might not see the
All
exhibit.
those
All of them. Because I'm sure you're avid watchers, right? Yeah. Viewers. Yeah, right. Any other questions for our applicant? No? All right.
Appreciate your attention. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Is there anybody in the audience that'd like to speak either for or against the case? All right, seeing no one, I'm going to close the case and ask if there's a member of the board who'd like to make a motion. Mr. Sermon, first one with his hand up. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, I move to recommend granting a request for a 6.5-foot side yard adjoining a street setback variation to permit the replacement modifications to an existing side yard stoop and steps on a legal non-conforming structure at 1004 Ashland Avenue in accordance with the plan submitted.
Do you have a second? Oh, okay. Mr. Robke, second. Mr. Sermon, your motion.
It's a very straightforward request, so I can approve it. It's evident that safety is a concern, and they need replacement, and I think the design is well done. So,
Mr. Robke.
Well said.
Anybody else want to add anything? No? I'm just going to add that I think this meets our standards of review. I, too, can support it. Why don't we take a vote?
Mr. Sermon,
Yes.
Mr. Robke,
Yes.
Mr. Colang,
Yes.
Ms. Norick,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider,
Yes.
Chairman Duffy.
Chair votes yes as well. So that's going to go as a positive recommendation of the village board. Their meeting, I announced, I forgot already, September 25th. You might want to come. It'll be on their consent agenda, which means at the beginning of their meeting, they vote yes on a whole bunch of stuff just one time, so it all passes. But just in case there's any questions, and it'll be in this room. So congratulations. Good luck. I do need one of you to sign off on this letter, though, just acknowledging your presence and some dates.
And I move to authorize the chairman to prepare the report and recommendation for the Zoning Board of Appeals for case number 2018-Z39.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye as well.
That one's for you.
Just get the log down soon. Thank you. When you're ready.
Our next case is 2018-Z40, 431 9th Street. This is a request for a 90-square-foot rear yard structure impervious surface coverage variation.
Hello.
Good evening. My name
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Jacqueline Boujde. I am requesting to build a two-car detached garage located at 431 9th Street in Wilmette.
Can you tell us, what's your address? Where do you live right now?
I live at 5148 Farwell, temporarily.
So this is a house for you, I take it?
Yes, it was, but then we were refused for the addition in the past, about a few months back when my husband was here. So now we won't be living there as planned because the addition that we had originally hoped for.
Okay, and that was an FAR issue, right? Yeah,
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
I think it was. That was part of it, yeah. Yeah. Yep. All right. Welcome back.
Well,
Well,
that was my husband last time, now it's
Yes.
me.
Yes.
Hello. So I am requesting to build a two-car garage in the back of the house. Conversations with many of the neighbors has always been the consistent question is, are you building a two-car garage? The street where the house is currently located is a very high-traffic location with two churches, two schools. There's always many cars parked on the street. You usually end up parking very far down the block when I'm there. Also, I think my understanding is that the reason requesting adjustment is because the lot is unusually small for the area. It's a 40 by 100 lot, so though a two-car garage is generally the code for a single-family house, because it's a smaller lot, it needs an adjustment for the request.
Okay. We have any questions for the applicant?
Just one question. Would it make a difference to you if the front of the garage was to align with the front of the house? Is there a reason why it comes out for any particular reason?
I believe that's where it's currently located, and also just to allow some sort of a yard space. Right now, the yard space is on the side yard of the house. So if we are able, and the house is located off the alley. So if any sort of help on the side yard would be beneficial for the
One
house.
question, what are you going to do with the exterior entrance to the basement?
It's kept existing. There's an exit in the back of the house, and it was an existing exit, and it's still there.
I don't see it on, I guess I don't see it on the plan, the proposed plan. Page this is, so you propose to keep it?
Yes, so if you look at the existing survey, I guess where it says there's a metal cover, that's the,
I got that, yeah, I
Okay.
understand that, but if you turn the page,
sure.
which is the proposed location of the garage,
Oh, I
maybe
see.
that's an oversight, it is not there, but you propose to keep that exterior entrance to the basement, is that correct?
For the basement, correct, and for the first floor, that's actually moved to the side of the house. So
Okay.
that is not there anymore, where there is a wood porch steps that's not existing anymore, only where the metal cover, that still remains there.
Thank you.
So, I had to ask Lisa, about our code for two-car garages. And the way that I understood it and I asked her about it is, if there's an existing one-car garage, the village isn't going out and making people build two-car garages. It's mostly for rehabs and construction. So to say that this is code and that we have to allow it because it's code, I didn't think that was, but
Yeah.
it is something in our code that you can have a two-car garage from a one-car garage and look at it as, I'm going to say maybe
hardship?
a hardship. That's the way I was kind of interpreting it. I don't know how anybody else was, but I just want to be clear that it's not something that's required if you've got a one-car garage, that you have to have a two-car garage.
Does it impact the current FAR? Or are they under with this?
I don't think they're over.
Because the variation is just for the impervious.
Yeah, rear yard impervious surface coverage.
Yeah, they're within the
They're
floor
within.
area and lot coverage, yep.
And floor area, right?
It is
Lot
almost a
coverage and
gut
floor.
rehab to the building itself, right?
Yes. Renovated.
So, when we were going through this last time, it was being classified as a new home,
Correct.
but what they're doing now is not classifying it as a new home?
Correct.
Because they were digging out the basement before and that threw it over, or what was?
They were going up and they were going out. And so less than 50% of this, or more than 50% of the existing structure was going to be gone, in addition to the interior work.
Okay, I don't remember it going out. All right,
A little bit, not huge.
yeah. All right, any other questions for our applicant? No?
I'm sorry, you said are you fixing up the home for yourself now, or to put it back on the market?
It's going to go back on the market, mainly because the size was not fitting for our family as is. Our original intention was to live there with an addition, but that was not granted, and then
All right, are there any other questions for our applicant? I don't see any. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak either for or against this case? All right. Yes, sir. Why don't you, I'm going to kill your name. Jacqueline, why don't you have a seat while he speaks?
Good evening.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Martin Grill. I live at 429 9th Street, directly across the alley from the subject property. While I came before you last time to speak against granting the variances for the addition to the dwelling, I'm here tonight to speak for the granting of the variances to allow the two-car garage. Basically, I feel that anything that reduces the likelihood of a car being parked in the alley decreases the likelihood of some obstruction to service vehicles. There's also a lot of pedestrian traffic through that alley because of the schools. So, car not being in the alley, if that's facilitated by a two-car garage, I'm all for it.
So how long have you lived in your residence?
Over 20 years.
So across the street, or across the alley from you,
Correct.
the applicant's home, in the past, people were leaving their
Parked
car?
in the alley, yes. The prior owners parked in the alley all the time.
So it would block half the alley?
It would block half the alley. Garbage trucks had a hard time coming through.
Yeah.
Wintertime was particularly bad because it was plowed funny. We have a great resource of having the alleys plowed, and it was kind of a hatchet job because the car was in the alley all the time. So
They were never asked to move their car by the police or the village or anything like that?
No.
Had anybody ever complained about the car being in the alley?
yes.
But nothing was really done,
Right.
at least that you'd recommend?
I don't think there was anything specific that prohibited it. It was just they had one car, they did not use the garage.
Oh,
So,
so they weren't even using the garage?
yeah.
All right.
But this is a case where the property is going up for resale. It
I don't think
was,
that garage was usable, frankly.
as it is right now?
Well, when
Well,
I last
as a-
saw it 3 months ago, it was
Right, correct.
terrible shape.
But then again, the house was not usable 3 months ago either. So, as a house that's been substantially rehabilitated and back on the market, certainly two-car garage would be one of the things that a prospective buyer would look for. So I'm I'm just all for it.
Is there anybody else that, I mean, when I drove the alley today, then there was, I think right at the T of the alley, there's somebody that has, parking pad that's kind of like on that curve, but nobody else has, you don't have any other issues with any cars because...
No, those other properties in the T of the alley, if they have a one-car garage, they have a parking pad adjacent to it. So, yeah, we don't have any other issues other than, kind of the temporary
Yeah.
loading, unloading kind of thing,
Right.
but not permanent parking. So,
All right. Any other questions?
my 2 cents.
No, we appreciate it. It's insight that, not living adjacent to...
Right.
Yeah, so...
Right.
All right.
I have a question for Lisa.
Thank you very much, by the way.
Thank you.
It says that they're asking for 440, but doesn't the new concrete apron also count towards impervious?
It does, but not structure.
Okay.
All right, any questions? No? All right, is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak either for or against the case? All right, seeing no one, I think we got everything from you, so thank you very much. I'm going to ask if there's someone, thank you, Mr. Schneider, will you make a motion.
Move to recommend granting, in case number 2018-C-40, move to recommend granting a request for a 90-square-foot, 9% rear yard structure impervious surface coverage variation at 431 9th Street in accordance with the plan submitted.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Colling, second. Mr. Schneider, your motion.
I can support this request. If you look at the standards for variation, the lot is unusually small. The need for a two-car garage for a number of reasons, including the one that was recently testified that the alley is used as a second parking space. And also, I just am the Uber driver for 3 of my grandchildren who just enrolled at St. Francis. And at around 3:10 in the afternoon, when the school lets out between 2:30 and 3:30, that stretch of 9th Street on your side of the street is full of cars. And I think that presents another unusual condition. And so I think we should grant this request.
Mr. Colling?
Yeah, as a board, I think we have, over the years, when petitioners have come before us to go from a one-car garage to a two-car garage, getting cars off the street, I think we have almost universally approved something like that. So for that reason, I can support this.
Any other comments? Mr. Robke?
While agreeing with the general comments, I'm troubled with one aspect of it where I think it might fail to meet the criteria. This is not a resident asking for an improvement. This is really driven strictly by economic considerations for resale value, and that causes a little bit of a problem for me because that is a reason not to approve something.
While I would typically agree with you, because they bought the house in anticipation of expanding it, and now weren't able to, and so we're now doing kind of the best with the bad situation. I look at it differently than a developer coming in.
I think I agree, and was really going to say, I think in this case, because they're not a developer trying to buy it and flip it, if this was a developer trying to just flip it,
I agree with you.
I think you're really just trying to get out of it without too much damage. And the best way to do that is to improve it and maybe come out ahead. So, for that reason, I think I can support it.
Any other comments? Yeah, Mr. Sermon?
I agree. I mean, they were in a situation where they honestly approached us to want to enlarge the house, and they couldn't. So now, to be able to sell, you couldn't sell with that garage. You'd have to build a new one-car garage that then doesn't make sense. You might as well build two. So.
Want to add your 2 cents?
Agree.
Okay, where I had a little hesitation along with Mr. Robke at the beginning, but then, having driven by the garage, it's not something that, you're going to just kind of fix up and be able to use. So then you're in asking for the replacement of a one-car garage, but there's room to put the two-car garage with just a minor variance request. So that's kind of what threw me onto the side where I think I could support this. Whether this is a flip or not, I just thought, there would have to be a request at some point with this garage. So I too found a way to support it.
I'll add 2 more cents. I am a nearby neighbor. I am an alley walker, and I think it will be, it is a busy area, and that car did always park right there and block the alley, and I think it'll be a benefit for that entire parcel.
All right.
That was 5 cents.
I feel like it meets our standards of review, so I too will support it. All right, why don't we take a vote?
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Colling?
Yes.
Ms. Nord?
Yes.
Mr. Rabke?
Yes.
Mr. Sermon?
Yes.
Chairman Duffy?
Chair votes yes as well. So that's going to go as a positive recommendation. Village Board meeting September 25th. Like I mentioned to the other applicant, please come out and sign this. But as I mentioned to the other applicant, it'll probably be on the consent agenda, which will be at the very beginning of the meeting. You'll be here like 15, 20 minutes.
Okay.
I move to authorize the chairman to prepare the report and recommendation for the Zoning Board of Appeals for case number 2018-C-40.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Robke, second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye as well. All right, Lisa, when you're ready.
Our next case is 2018 Z36, 241 Kilpatrick Avenue. This is a request for a 322.46 square foot front yard impervious surface coverage variation to permit the retention of a front walk on the legal nonconforming structure.
Hi there, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Mustafa Sabki, and I get to your district, guys, on the May the 4th, which is I get this house. It was old people, and they have old kids living in this house, which is they don't need this request, which is I'm requesting for the added of the concrete, and I would like to go over that before I start over the footage of the concrete, which is I am requesting. We find out that's not. I don't know if Mrs. Robert she correct that the correct number for the which is I am requesting.
If you read this sentence, this is wrong.
Are you talking about the last sentence? In
The second to
paragraph?
last, second to last sentence on this paragraph, yeah.
Yes, that is probably incorrect, yes.
So I think I just added these two numbers, came up with that. All right.
5249 was,
Yep,
yeah.
that's what I got.
Okay.
All right.
I'm sorry about that. So because my contractor, he keeps telling me it's 57 square feet. I am adding to replace the bushes, which is, and I put the maximum of that. He been counting and going back and forth and going back and forth with the Mrs. Robert for the permits, the first permit for the driveway, the second, and that it's done. And I told her I took the request as a verbal to do the front wall side at the front, and I replaced that with the concrete, which is the first reason I did this because of the safety of the kids.
So let's take a step back.
Yes, sir.
All right, so you came and asked for a permit to redo your driveway.
The driveway, yes.
Right. So, and you were putting in whatever, water retention, because you've got a driveway that slopes down below grade to your garage door, and you were putting in a new driveway, and you put in some pumps, right? So you could move the water out, right?
Yes, sir. They've been existing there, the
pumps
water.
were there
Yes,
already.
sir.
Okay. But you were doing a new driveway. And then you asked if you could do a new sidewalk, right?
It's been there. I'm asking the extension of 57 square feet added to the previous sidewalk, which
So there was a picture submitted that had your sidewalk on the south side is a straight line. The old sidewalk was a straight line, right?
No more. I'm coming to that comment, sir.
Fully understand. So, and then on the north side of the sidewalk, between the sidewalk and the driveway, as it went down, there's a retaining wall, but there was also a bunch of bushes, right? Between the sidewalk and the...
Three bushes,
Right.
exactly.
Right,
That's
okay.
the place I'm talking about.
So you
yes, sir.
removed those bushes, and you removed the sidewalk, and you filled all that in with concrete.
That's correct, yes. sir.
Okay. Now, your initial request for a permit was just for the driveway, but then when the inspector came out, he saw that you were going to do your sidewalk as well and said you needed a new permit.
That's
You came to
correct.
talk to Lisa, and Lisa said, well, you're going to be over on your square footage, so you need a variance. And you said, well, the guys are going to be there doing it all at once, so I'm just going to have them do it, and then I'm going to come and ask for the variance.
That's correct, yes, sir.
Okay. So that we all understand where we are right now.
Just a little explanation about this note exactly, sir, because when I go back and forth with Mrs. Robert, I have only the choices I give her, but she couldn't approve it. She said I have to go through this meeting because
Right.
of I took 96.2 of the south sidewalk. It's no more there.
So, but the sidewalk that you're talking about on the south was along the front of the house, or along the south side of the house from that door that's a second floor door on the south that's set back about halfway back from
All
the
the way
front
to
of your
the
house?
patio. I took
And it's the
everything.
whole side, right?
Yes, I took everything.
Okay, so what we are having to deal with, though, see, that sidewalk that you took out really doesn't count. That's not what we're counting as impervious surface against you.
But the front part does, but he
okay.
took out more that doesn't.
So from the
impact
front
it.
of the house to the sidewalk in front, that was counting against him? And sort of,
Yeah,
some of
yeah,
it was, right?
Less than that, but yeah.
This area here, right?
Yeah,
So,
the
but
front yard
for-
setback is,
Right.
But yeah.
So about how much was taken out that counts against him?
I think that was 69.66 square
So
feet.
I
70 square
have the
feet.
numbers, sir, if you want me to
Okay.
give you. So I went back and forth with Mrs. Robert for that one, and she told me, we don't care about the back, whatever, even that it helps for the improvement for the neighbor or something, for the
Yeah.
absorb the water, the one in the back. But she told me it's 27 feet, that's why we care from the back, the front of the house.
Right.
So we compare the front of the house, the one just they took. So the concrete was wide 2.7 feet. So that gives you 96 feet, and I added 57. So we have 96 against 57 feet. That's why I'm requesting.
Is that about right?
We disagree on this point.
Okay.
The challenge is that I don't have good information on what was there before.
Right.
So all I have is the plat of survey, which I understand was not the way it had been. And so it sounds like there might have been more coverage existing than what's shown on the plat, but I can't verify that. So the numbers, to some extent, what was there doesn't really matter, because what we're looking at is what is being proposed.
Right.
And so what the number of what's being proposed, I'm pretty solid on.
Right, because it's there.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
All right, go
I'm
on.
sorry, can I explain just this? Because this is the same thing I'm going back and forth with. Even what Mrs. Roberts, she said, so I still have the, because I told her when I went to her office just to get the permit, so for the previous owner, I don't take no blame because I didn't ask what, that's why she said she find out the concrete was before the front 27 feet and up, it was a little over. That's why we get to this point. She cannot approve it. But now I told her only the way I have to do it for my safety case. They don't have no other. I have 1 year to 7 years. All of them they play, and I have to do that to make a rail straight from the top because it's at 10 feet. When you just get out from the door, the bushes, it was not safe pretty much to do that concrete and to do like a rail for the kids, to protect.
So, but which, all right, so all right, what I'm understanding you saying is that you've got some kids, 1-year-old to 7 years old.
Yes, sir.
And the bushes that were there were not keeping them possibly from walking to the edge of that
Of the edge of
retaining
the-
wall. the
That's
retaining
correct.
wall.
Yes.
But what you've built is a sidewalk right up to that's equal in height to the retaining wall, so they could just now walk right over the edge.
Well, that's why I'm getting, when I get
Okay.
the approval from you, sir, I'm trying to do like all my neighbor, they do the same. If you start from 241, all that neighbor, because we have added number, which is I am, and we have the even number. So the even number across the street, they
Yes.
have the garage on the top. For us, all the garages, except mine, because I was all the people living there, they know what they are doing. But the other people, they have the kids, all of them, none of that neighborhood has the rear like this, the garage, and he has to put something metal, stronger, not bushes. The kids, they can fall straight to the ground.
Like a fence? Is that what you're talking about, like
A
a
fence,
metal
yes.
fence?
Yeah,
That you
metal
still want
fence.
to...
Was
Have to be a full,
was anything
couldn't be just a
permitted?
rail, it'd have to be a full fence with no area
Yeah, yes.
larger, I think, than 5 inches.
At least has that.
Question for
Okay.
Ms. Roberts, did the permit show any type of railing mounted on the new retaining wall?
There was nothing on the driveway permit for that, and the plan for the sidewalk was really just what's the site plan that we have.
I think, hearing the explanation and reviewing this, I think to maybe understand where you're coming from is, I think you thought you could just take the area from the sidewalk and transfer it over here, but the situation you had, I imagine, was not conforming. So then Lisa's goal was to bring it into conformance so you wouldn't have to have a variation.
That's correct.
So, but you know, that's why Lisa's with the village. She's there to advise you on this stuff and to take a plan and have her challenge it and then go ahead and make your own decision on the calculations isn't the right way to go about it. I mean, you really should have stopped the contractor. The concrete is poured at a separate time when they do a sidewalk compared to the retaining wall, so you did have the opportunity. But you can't, you were assuming that what was there was your calculation, but I think that's where we run into the problem. And nobody, I mean,
The railing?
it's very rare to have an applicant come.
We agree you should have a railing.
I've been on the zoning board over 5 years, have somebody told,
Yeah.
don't proceed with this work until you get a variance. That hasn't occurred since I've been on the zoning board. And then the owner goes ahead and just, says, I'm doing it anyway. You could have, I understand if you want to, put a fence and bring the sidewalk
Right, sir.
closer to the driveway, that would be acceptable, but you'd have to, at some point, narrow it down. The first case tonight, if you saw that, they had a wide stairway, and then they narrowed it down when it got closer to the street, so they would not exceed the lot coverage, so.
I think we have a couple of issues with this one. We always wrestle with an issue when somebody does work without a permit and then has to come back. This is a little bit unique because before the work was done, it's our understanding you were told that you needed a permit with a variance for this work and then chose not to pursue that. And then to come and ask, that's point one. Point two is I'm not sure that any of us know exactly what you're asking for. If there's going to be a railing on the wall, it's our understanding a permit would need to be issued for that railing to make sure that it meets code for the railing, and you speak towards safety. If that's the reason for it, I'm not sure if we're inclined to consider it in light of the disregard that we would.
Well, the railing isn't going to be, it's not something that's going to fall under our purview.
But I beg to differ. The reason he's providing is a hardship for safety, but what he's showing us is clearly not addressing any safety issue. He's showing us a solution that doesn't have a rail that he's gone ahead and built, that I think all of us, when we looked at it, thought was much less safe than the existing condition.
So I had asked Lisa.
If he's addressing safety as the concern, I want to see that it's being addressed, because that's the
Right. Well,
the referenced hardship.
We're kind of heading into discussion, but I'm going to give the applicant an opportunity to add here because, there was no application for the sidewalk, and in turn, there was no request, I should say, for a permit for the sidewalk, or request for a railing, for the safety. The applicant had just gone ahead with it, and at a future time was going to add the railing without coming for a permit, I assume, because you just were going to add a railing because you just added the sidewalk, because you needed a permit for the railing at the time that you were doing the work. So the railing itself is not something that comes under our purview. The permitting is not, but the whole idea of the project as a whole would be something that we would see.
Lisa, can I ask you a question for Lisa?
Sorry.
When you have a deck that is X feet or inches above the grade, you need to have a railing, correct?
That is my understanding, yes.
And that railing has certain specifications, minimum specifications.
Yes.
This would meet, at least part of this driveway would meet that requirement, correct?
I believe so, yes.
So, would that be a separate process? Would he come in now and separately, or would that have been incorporated in?
We would just ask the applicant to submit some information on it so that we know how tall it is, and it would just be a revision to his driveway permit.
But he would do it because it's now not per code without that railing.
Right. Yes. That's my understanding.
Wasn't per code to build a sidewalk either.
I'm sorry, I didn't finish because I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So I don't want nobody look at me like I'm against the pictures of the trees. I took 3 of them, and I believe, because you told me right now, I heard from all of you, which is, I didn't, the old picture, which is Mrs. Liz, she has it, and the old, because I just get the house too, but if you look to the old picture, and if you go only with the survey, the numbers, so that gives you exactly what has been there for the concrete. So the quantity of the concrete is there.
I have that picture, which I think is...
Yeah, that's what we have in our packet.
Yeah.
So really, what
It's not
we're
there now.
having to wrestle with is, you're not following the rules, okay? And doing the work, and now coming and asking for forgiveness in a way. And, what we have been directed by the powers that be on cases like this where someone does the work and then has to come in and ask for permission to have done the work, or they already did. We're supposed to take a look at this as if the work had not been completed and decide if it's something that we would pass or make the recommendation to approve or not approve. So this being done, this is kind of in the back of your mind as we're running through this. Is this something that we would have approved or not approved? And that's why we're supposed to vote on this. Now, the questions will keep coming to you about the plan, and it sounds like, in your mind, you had an idea that you're going to build the sidewalk all the way to the retaining wall at the same height as the retaining wall, so that you could roll a car right off the edge, a toy car right off the edge. But you're saying you're going to put some railings up, and we've talked about how we got to go through that process. You got to come meet with Ms. Roberts, village staff, and add that to your permit. You got to show them a plan, make sure it's the right height, and everything. So what you've done to try and mitigate the width of the sidewalk, the additional concrete that you've added, is you've removed some concrete from this front yard that counts in your favor. But you've removed a lot also that is beneficial because you've removed concrete, so there's more pervious surface on your lot to absorb water. It leads me to a question as I looked at the property. The sidewalk that you removed all the way down the side of the house, there was a door that leads into the side of your house that this sidewalk served, right?
Yes.
What are your plans there? Because now you have a door with a landing and stairs that stop about 3 feet above the ground and nothing.
After we are finished, that is going to be only the racks, which is we are not going to use the sidewalk from. I need only racks from out straight there. So I'm not going to use that no more for the idea I get it from my neighbor, which is he has the same thing.
Yeah.
He take that to absorb the water because that neighborhood, I am new to the neighborhood, but most of the people, they complaining about the
a lot of water issues.
Yeah, a lot of water issues. So my issues too, it used to be the water too. When I connect that one, Even that, I have 2 sump pump, so whatever the water comes from the ramp down, so right now it's okay.
Right, it's pumping it out to the north.
Exactly.
So go down the south side of your house, coming out of that second floor door, what are you going to put there? Because you've got a dangerous drop right now off your bottom step.
So rack, all the way rack from my door, if I wanna use that door, so only a rack from that. I already put like 2 trees there. So instead of I have that, I put like 2 trees and that little on the front of you can see it now. And that is gonna be a rack right there and rack right, and it still absorb the water and goes all the way to that.
So similar to the stones that you've placed as a walkway along the garden area that you've created, so you're going to put some of those similar flat stones at the base of the stairs?
Yeah, just rack. They have little. My neighbor, he put the something which is it looks good and nice. It's only a rack, small, but so many of them. Still, the water can go through, and you can walk on it. No mud, no.
All right, is that something that he's got to? You don't know.
It would be good if it was shown on something, but I don't believe there's any zoning issue.
Not a zoning issue, but a permitting issue for maybe not. Yeah.
Don't have a drawing, you don't know if it's a zoning.
Yeah. So when you come to talk about the recommendation from me personally to you personally, not forget I'm sitting up here. I just say to you, when you come talk to Lisa for the railing, the fencing, or whatever you're going to do, also have a plan ready for what's happening at the bottom of those stairs, just so that the village's understanding of what your intentions are, so that when someone walks out there and from the village and inspects what's been done, they know what to expect to see and that you are following what you say you're going to do. Okay? So.
I would suggest one step further, and I would suggest get some drawings together for a railing. If we're being asked to approve the plans as submitted on the grounds that it's a safer solution, there is no railing shown. I have a hard time accepting safety as a hardship when there's a condition that I think others have mentioned certainly seems to be less safe and is not code compliant. Again, the hardship is safety. Is it possible that these plans could be amended to include the information so that we can accept that it's a safer solution or understand how it's a safer solution? Because what I see on the plans and what I see in the field.
So instead of making this applicant come back to us at our next available date on September 25th, maybe it's, for the sake of speed and safety, he has his plans ready for the September 25th meeting of the village board, when you need to come to the village board and say, okay, this is what I'm planning on doing here. Here's all my drawings. This is what it's going to look like when I'm done. Because if I'm gonna make an assumption here that it may not get a positive recommendation, but you still need to take it to the village board and explain what you're doing in order to get them to overturn if it goes negatively from us. And it would be in your best interest at that point in time to have the plans together and be working with Lisa about the railing that you're talking about so that they can see everything that you're conceptualizing, to show them where you're going with this, so that then they can maybe overturn a negative recommendation from us so that you can proceed with your work and make the site safe. Clear?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So now, there was a question that I had for you regarding your explanation about water. Somehow you were saying that by creating this sidewalk is going to help with water on your site. Did I misunderstand the way that I read it?
So for the water issue,
Yeah.
yes, because yes, sir. The water, it used to be for the places of the bushes. It used to be the bushes right there, and always the bushes, keep that
Okay,
water going.
so you're talking about the pervious surface area. So the area that can absorb water coming
That's
down
correct,
is
yes.
greater. Okay,
Yes.
that's what you were, okay. All right, I couldn't understand what you were trying to get to.
Yeah, sorry.
Now I do. Are there any other questions for our applicant?
I have a question for Lisa that involves the applicant. So how many square feet are they currently over? The applicant said 57 square feet, but in here it looks like it's 322.
I think the applicant was saying that he was taking 56 square feet of pervious out. So I don't think it was yeah.
Oh,
Not
okay.
a net, but,
So the request really is the,
So the request is 322.4, but it's because a lot of that was existing already.
right, so based on what's on the plat, we figured 714.47 square feet existing coverage, which is 284.
so
over.
some of the coverage, the overage is from the driveway itself,
The driveway by itself puts him over,
is,
is over.
It puts him over just by itself, so adding the sidewalk just added more over
Oh,
already,
okay.
so.
And removing the south sidewalk helped,
yeah.
you know.
All right, any other questions for our applicant? No? All right, is there anything else you'd like to add before I see if there's anybody else that wants to say anything?
No,
No?
sir, I
Clear?
want just to be clear. I am taking that, this is only my argument, and I don't have anything else to say, The existing, which is Mrs. Roberts, she just mentioned right now about, to answer the question, which is the concrete used to be for the previous customer, the previous owner, I'm sorry. So that doesn't have nothing to do with me, which is I am adding, so the contractor, he said it's 57 feet, I am adding. After that, he said, let's see, it's the maximum, you are not adding more than 75. So he said, if it's 75, take this, which is, it gives you 96. So I am not adding anything. If I take this one, this is for the neighbor, for the safety, for the absorb the water. So I took already 96 against 75, if he said. So he said because of the narrow, the previous sidewalk, he was coming straight. And the reason, even for me, maybe you have the survey, you can see it there. There is a sewer, and I cannot change it at the front exactly of the house. If you see at the front of the house, like 6 feet exactly. So that one, it was all concrete. That's why I come with that plan to come with the concrete. The sewer you cannot. If I wish, if the sewer not there, I can do the concrete, touch to the wall, which is I am asking. That's the space of the bushes, and I go narrow. But there is a sewer at the front for the major sewer for the house. It's on the front of the house. That's why it makes me to go straight. To make the sidewalk that measure.
Okay.
But just to make it clear that, the contractor doesn't know the codes and everything else, so he's not the one that you should have been taking the advice from. It was from Lisa.
I took the advice, and I took verbal advice from her. I'm going back and forth with Mrs. Raber, but I told her that my money is already gone with the guy, and I did whatever I did. I didn't go, I'm sorry, I didn't go against the law. She know me very well. Every 10 I go by the law. I took any permits, everything. Except right now we are stopping. I was waiting for this meeting. It was the 25th of August. So that's why we're waiting right now I didn't go even to apply for permits for the rallying to do it's still as it is.
But just one last thing, the sidewalk being over 7 feet wide is a large sidewalk going to a home. Typically, a home might have 3 or 4 feet in width. So I guess if you would have followed what she said, maybe you'd still be over, but not quite as much.
I just explained to you, sir, right now. There's no way. There is the sewer, which is a big one on the front. You look to the survey, you can find the sewer at the front. You want to go like this and you go narrow?
Sure, you could do that.
Can you show us on the survey where it is? Where are you saying the sewer is on the survey?
So if you look right here, sir, there is a sewer right here, exactly. So this is the place when I asked for the coverage. This is the 75.
So where's this sewer?
It's exactly right here.
So it's not on the survey, but you're saying, so it's in the middle of your sidewalk is a sewer?
It's a little bit closer to the right side, not at the middle right here. That's why it makes me. I show.
Oh, it's right there.
Yeah.
So I didn't see this when I walked over there. So there's like just a general sewer, with the opening,
Yeah.
water gets through it and.
I don't think it's open.
I think it's probably a private one for the,
Yeah.
that
like
has
a
to do with
clean
the
out?
pumping system, yeah.
They have like a sump pump.
Yeah.
And it's a huge one. I couldn't do anything with it.
Oh, right there. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, that's the one way. And I took the bushes right here. I took
Yep.
1, 2, and 3, the previous one, and I put 14 already now, which does absorb the water more.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right, is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak either for or against this case? All right, seeing no one, you've given us everything, yes, that you want to share?
Yes, sir,
Okay.
except the permits for the writing,
Yeah.
I'm waiting for, yes, sir.
All right, I'm going to ask if there's a member of the board that would like to make the motion. Mr. Robke's motion.
With
You can have
regard
a
to
seat while we
case
speak.
2018 Z36, move to recommend granting a request for 322.46 square foot, 22.5% front yard impervious surface coverage variation to prevent the retention of a front walk on the legal non-conforming structure at 241 Kilpatrick Avenue in accordance with the plan submitted.
Mr. Schneider, second. Mr. Robke, your motion.
I think my primary reason I can't support this, although there are also secondary reasons, is it's in accordance with the plan submitted. If the hardship is safety, although there's referenced in the letter to a railing, our approval is per the plans that are submitted. There is no railing, and therefore I can't accept the safety as a hardship. I also agree with some of the other comments that have been made. A 7-foot wide walk is well above average width in the village, and could have minimizing that. We're always looking to minimize. There's a comment in the letter about how filling it with concrete instead of the old bushes is going to help with the flooding. I'm not quite sure I understand that. Our general practice is impervious area, or rather permeable areas are desirable. So absent that other information and with the width, it's not something that I can support.
All right, Mr. Schneider.
Going by your guideline, that had this come to us prior to this work being done, what would have been, at least in my case, the decision or my recommendation, and I would say I would have approved it because there's a net reduction in impervious surface. There's nothing in our code that says how wide the front walk should be. And the other thing is that we never, when we get a request where there's a renovation to a building, a house, we don't check whether it meets code or not. We assume, the building code. We assume the stair have the certain tread width and height and all of that, and conforms to the construction codes. And I assume this will happen here, or they will be cited at some point. So this is a net reduction in impervious surface. I think it makes sense, and I can approve it.
Any other comments? Mr. Colling?
You know, the biggest issue I have with it is the fact that you were told you were doing something that was, you needed a variance for, and you went ahead and did it anyhow. And, we've had other situations where people have done stuff, didn't know, came back, and either tried to address it. There's been a couple of situations where, for instance, with that one, I think it was a combination tree house and storage facility that they had to take it down. But that's really what troubles me the most, is that you were advised basically not to do it. You did it anyhow, and I get, you had the contractor lined up and what have you, but I don't know if the village board's going to, if you get approved, well, you'd have to jackhammer it out anyhow if you're going to have to redo it, but and I'm troubled by the fact that you say it's for safety reasons and you don't have any safety precaution. I do agree with Mr. Schneider. There's a net reduction in overall impervious surface, and, if it's, we probably wouldn't have approved this as a 7-foot, not because it's 7 feet, but because of the impervious surface issue. We would have probably said, why not make it 5 or 4 or whatever.
Try to reduce the request.
If you make it forward.
So I'm kind of all over this.
Yeah. Mr. Sermon, you want to add something?
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Colling. When the applicant doesn't go through the process the correct way, it makes for a difficult situation. And additionally, you had mentioned that we should, review this as if it was coming to us for the first time and there had been no work done. And if that's the situation, we would have been able to say, you're already over, so let's reduce that sidewalk down. And I think the only reason I think you'd bring up the code issue is it's when it deals with life safety. I couldn't approve it without bringing up the issue of not having a railing on
As
the
it's
drawing
designed, yeah.
as it's designed. I mean, currently it's a very dangerous situation.
Yep.
I mean, near the home, you could drop down almost 5 feet.
Yep.
So I can't support it.
Ms. Norick, any comments?
I'm torn too. Well, I guess maybe I'm more torn like you are, because I think he just got was misguided by his contractor, which he shouldn't have listened to. Because I think the contractor said, "Well, remove here, and then then you're okay, because you won't have a net increase." But certainly, if it came to us and he was proposing it, I too would want something narrower, and we'd work on ways to, maybe it starts at the width and narrows down so that we don't have as much impervious.
I think my biggest hang-up here is that we don't have a plan to show what's going to happen here. And that's why I threw out the advice, it's going to be...
It's already happened.
Well, but the railing is really where we are right now. And so that he needs, I think I'm gonna vote against this because we don't have a plan to show what the end outcome's gonna be here. So I think when I was speaking to our applicant that maybe it would be advisable to have the plan by the time he comes to the village board meeting so that they can see what it's gonna be, so that if they feel necessary to overturn us, if it becomes negative to them, then at least they'll know what it's going to be so that they can feel comfortable overturning us and letting them proceed. And that I see as the most expeditious way of him getting to the end, as opposed to having him draw plans and come back and request this from us. So that's my only hang-up on this. Yes, if we were here and he hadn't done the work, I would absolutely be pushing for a narrower sidewalk just so that we could reduce the request, because although, we're going to have an impervious surface issue, we were trying to minimize it, as we always try and ask. So that's where I'm coming from on this. So why don't we take a vote, but it feels like I know where this is going.
Mr. Robke?
No.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Colang?
Yes.
Ms. Norick?
No.
Mr. Sturman?
No.
Chairman Duffy?
Chair's voting no as well. So this is going to go as a negative recommendation to the village board. I'm going to reiterate what I told you before. Put your plan together. Come talk to Ms. Roberts and staff about the railing and what you see as the outcome for your work, and then come to the village board meeting, which is September 25th, and present it to them. Let them see what the end result is going to be. Because I think one of the hang-ups that we have right now in approving this is that we don't know. You move forward without plans. And so without plans, in my opinion, we can't recommend approving this. But the village board can take your plans as they see them and overturn our vote and our recommendation and say, okay, we're going to approve this. Go ahead with your work since we know what it's going to be. All right? All right. So could you come and sign one of these for me? And make sure you come on the 25th.
Sure.
And it'll be in this room.
I move to authorize the chairman to prepare the report and recommendation for the Zoning Board of Appeals for case number 2018-C-36.
Do you have a second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye as well.
That one's for you.
All right, thank you. Good luck. Yeah. All right, when you're ready, please.
Our next case is 2018 Z41, 2601 Old Glenview Road. This is a request for a 17.5-foot front yard parking space setback variation to permit the expansion of a parking lot.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I don't know if it's welcome back or not. Did you present
It's
to us?
welcome back
Okay.
several
With the
times.
courts? Yeah.
Here, downstairs in Lisa's office, but
All right.
So, Westmoreland, John Guy, General Manager of the club. We're trying to address a shortage of parking. The club's gotten busier over the years. And
Congratulations.
thank you. In the past, when we were short parking, our employees would kind of park on Old Glenview Road. I've been this is my 8th season at the club. I'd say the first 4 or 5 years, it's never been an issue. In the past few years, we've had lots of complaints from neighbors not wanting to see cars parked all day on Old Glenview Road. Village officials get the complaints in the butt of this, so I told them once we got done with our paddle house project, we would take a hard look at this gravel lot where our employees park today, see if there's some ways to expand it. So you've got all the information there. I mean, basically, we're landlocked. We can't go east, we can't go west, but there is an opportunity to go and expand this gravel lot north and south. So the club would be willing to, on the south end of this gravel lot, there's a berm that's part of our practice short game area. We can reshape the berm and get another row of parking in there. And then north, if I can get a variance on the 25-foot requirement to be off the property line to 7.5 feet, which the drawing shows, we can get another row of parking in there as well. It would not involve relocating the fence. The fence would stay as is. All the trees in that area, junk bushes, we would remove. We would put in arborvitae, so we'd still have screening from traffic and from the neighbors on Old Glenview Road. We pick up 29 spaces by doing this. And the other variance request is, when I met with village officials, I learned that there's a code that requires a landscaped island for every 20 spaces. And that would take up 7 spaces, so you have a conforming drawing there that shows that, and that would reduce our net gain. So I'd ask for a variance on that as well. I don't see that being a big deal. The parking lot is private to the club, to members and guests. It's screened from Old Glenview Road, both traffic and neighbors, and would help us out a lot. And I think the village officials would really like this because they're getting tired from hearing from our neighbors, as well as myself.
So I have a couple of questions for you. If we were just looking at your conforming drawing, just for the sake of discussion,
Which is the, can you?
it's the conforming drawing is the second to last page.
1.6? No.
There isn't a number on
No
it because
number,
it
just
it's
says
1.6.
conforming on the bottom.
Is 1.6?
Yeah, 1.6 is the one without the island.
Yeah. So, okay, 1.6 is without the island, but for the sake of this question,
Before 2.5, second.
the conforming, the drawing that you submitted at the end of your letter, and it says conforming down at the bottom. You have handicapped parking spaces outside the paddle huts.
There is currently.
Those are existing?
Yeah, when we did the paddle project, the village required those to be in, so they're today.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that was,
Then it should have wrote, that's conforming with the islands, so you can see 4
Right, you can
landscape islands at the
Right.
engineered drawing.
so then, what we're talking about, and still referring to this drawing, one of the variances, this 7.5-foot setback. If we grant that, really it's allowing you 15, 16, 17, 18 additional spaces. Those are the ones that run along that north fence line, and the 3 additional ones that are kind of at an angle.
Correct.
Okay. So the benefit from this is those 18 additional parking spaces, because that's really, that's the biggest, I think.
Yeah, that, and then all the way to the south. So, in my count where I say we park 35 cars there today, that's on gravel, not striped or organized, and then tucking some trees along the north under
I drove through
branches,
it.
under junk
Yeah.
bushes.
I drove through there too. I saw how they were parked in there.
So you
Yeah.
probably saw my car there too, so.
Assuming.
So Pat, you're saying the group of the north
Yeah.
ones are the ones that are really affected by the
The
setback?
front yard setback.
Otherwise, the others would be
The
acceptable?
others are not, they're not. Am I correct? Yeah, yeah.
They are fine.
And I should also mention, we're going to asphalt, we're going to meet the MWRD requirements for stormwater sewers, striped and organized, so it's no longer going to be a
How are you
gravel
gonna
lot when we're done.
How are you going to meet the requirements for?
I'm sorry, how-
Stormwater, how are you going to deal with that?
Well, civil engineering will look into that. They actually did some work with, their own opinion what MWRD will require when we did the paddle project. So we think there's going to be 2 stormwater sewers that will be required, but we'll have to go through MWRD if we're required to.
So retainage type.
For the purpose of storing, or the purpose just getting rid of the water into the village?
Just getting rid of the water.
Into the village sewers?
I believe so.
But a slower release.
It'll be detention.
Yeah.
Or retention. It'll decrease the flow so the flow is acceptable, so it'll have to be on-site storage or it won't meet MWRD.
But that's not our purview. All right. So we've got two, the request as presented is for the setback to permit expansion of the parking lot, but it's not requesting the variation from the requirement for the islands.
Yes, that is heard by the Appearance Review Commission.
All right, so all we are talking about is this front yard setback, which is then 18 or 19 spaces right there. Okay.
What is, I may have missed it, what's the proposed height of the new arborvitae to begin with?
I don't know what will be required, so they're usually 6-7 feet.
Okay.
Whether you can give them taller or not, I don't know, but I'm happy to look into it.
Any other questions? No? Everybody's good? All right,
What about the, one last question, what about the operation of the fence at that entrance? Does that get closed off at some point in the evening, or is that really just?
You talk about the gate down by the service
isn't there a
road?
rolling gate?
That gets closed and locked in the evening time.
It does, okay.
Yeah, that's just for more of a service road to
Okay.
bring in materials for our Greens and Grounds maintenance building for the golf course.
I see.
It's not used for members or guests.
All right, anything else from the board? No? Let me see. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak either for or against this case? Yes, sir. Please come on up. Hi, welcome.
Hi, I'm David Roberts. I live at 2608 Old Glenview Road. My wife and I have lived there for 38 years. I applaud the club for trying to add some parking spaces. I think that's something that is well needed.
Could you tell us where exactly? Is it across from this proposed parking lot, or where?
My home?
Yes.
My home is west of there. My home is just west. It's the old Romer house. It's just west of the main entrance to the club.
It's west of the entrance to Romer Field.
No, to the main entrance to the club.
Okay.
I want to make a couple of points and comments if I could.
Feel free.
Okay. I think there's a couple things that I heard that are inaccurate in reviewing the plans. I'm an architect licensed to practice in Illinois. I was looking at the plans, and there's a couple of main points here that I think are, I'll say, just inaccurate at this point. On Exhibit 1.4, this page, site plan, existing condition site plan, it shows where they were just talking about the row of trees that are going to be taken down. It shows now that that's a landscaped area. It's actually a parking area. It's all gravel. It's not labeled as such, but I was at the club over the weekend at a wedding, and my niece got married there, and
So you're saying just north of the asphalt road?
Pardon me?
Just north of the asphalt road,
Correct.
that area?
That's all stone. And the part that isn't stone is just parked on. Those are photographs I took from the street. Cars are parked in there all the time, best I can tell. So the numbers of parking places that are being stated as existing are really much lower than what's actually there. What's being stated right now as the ultimate amount of parking spaces added is almost equal to the amount of cars that I saw on Saturday, this past Saturday when I was at the wedding.
When it was, the lot was basically
There was,
overflowing.
it was a busy day.
Yeah, very busy day. Okay,
All right,
so what are they, my understanding was they're saying they park about 35 cars in there. Is that about right? Yeah.
There's many more spaces than that. presently, and that photograph shows some of that.
Can you bring that? I can't quite
Sure.
see.
I think some of the, they're just parking on the, I don't know if that whole area was gravel, or to me, it appeared that a lot was lawn as
gravel.
well.
Private property, I didn't
It's-
spend a lot of
yeah,
time on it,
it's-
but it's a mixture of
yeah,
gravel
and people, you know, they're, where they can get cars squeezed in there, they're squeezing cars in there. I mean, it's, because it's not really an organized parking area.
Yeah.
I applaud their desire to park more cars. That's terrific. That's wonderful. I think it's unfortunate that a mature row of trees will be cut down, and that was not, those trees are not shown, again, on this plan. I think that's inaccurate. There's
Well, it's
some
an
ex-
old survey. I mean, I don't know that.
Well, I don't know. This is
I guess the issue is,
2018 is the date on this plan.
the issue is, are you in favor or not in favor of the project? And if not, why?
Okay, fair enough. I'm not in favor of the way that this is being shown presently. I'm in favor of them adding parking spaces. I think that granting a variance to allow it to get closer to the street is not, and cut down all those trees, which I think would be very unfortunate. I'm glad they're talking about arborvitae, but there's a nice row of mature trees there. Maybe not all of them are perfect. Maybe there are some beautiful ones mixed in with some that aren't. I think that's unfortunate to say we're just going to cut those down and put in 6-foot-high arborvitaes. I think that would be unfortunate. I think this is the case where the standards for the variation are really not being met. And I'll be specific. In the case of your standard A, I think this is an inconvenience rather than a hardship. There's plenty of land all around there where they could add cars.
What land are we referring to? Onto the golf course, or?
Well, that's their land, isn't it?
Sure, but it's, you know, it's not intended for the parking of cars. It's part of the draw to the
Neither
location.
is the front yard.
That's not a bad argument, but.
Okay. So there's plenty of land available. So I would say it's an inconvenience and not a hardship. That's point A on your standards. B is the plight of the owner was created by the owners. They just finished, in the past couple of years, a new paddle court area there. That could have been positioned differently, I would imagine, so that more parking could have been made available at that time. That's something that might have been considered. And they just did that project that's something that I don't think is, I think that's something that was created by themselves. In looking through the documents that the village provided here, I looked back over the older cases, zoning cases that have been requested here, 2601 Old Glenview Road, and the one thing that struck me was that the existing parking lot, again, existing conditions, Exhibit 1.4, and I circled the area that I roughly measured there just by the plan. I'm an architect, I can get my way around a set of plans. That entire parking lot, at least 3/4 of it, is closer than the allowable distance.
The setback?
The setback distance. So I'm just, as I look at this and look at the past record, there's no record of them having received a variance for that. Again, I'm looking at the plans and asking some questions here. Standard C, the conditions are peculiar to the property. I would say in that case, those existing trees are really problematic in my mind. I'd hate to see that nice row of trees come down to provide some parking places that could be added somewhere else. And right now, they're parking there anyways. So kind of wonder who's been watching that. And F, and I'm almost done, F, standard F, the variation if granted will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood and will be consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies set forth in the comprehensive plan. I'm not going to pretend to know the comprehensive plan front to back, but I am certain that the comprehensive plan says that there should be a front yard, and one of the reasons to have a front yard is so that there can be landscaping, so that the village can have a more beautiful appearance, and that our front yards are not dominated by parking lots, and have trees and landscaping and green space available. Those were all my notes. However, I'll come to one last point, which was brought up briefly about the water runoff. Presently, right just to the east of the driveway that comes off the parking lot, the one with the gate on it that somebody was asking about, the village has a sewer. That's actually a low spot in the road. And I know the village has been working hard to figure that out, but even in the smallest rain, that section of the sewer fills up to almost cover the road. That's on a regular basis, and not just on the heaviest rain, but on even a moderate rain. So this parking lot, without water detention or retention as required, and as will be required, is something that maybe it's not under your planning here, but or under your review here, but something that should be seriously considered.
It's not under our review, but I think what John said was that the MWRD will have whatever its requirements are, and the club will meet those, which they have done with other projects at the club.
I'm sure, but what it's going to end up being is that parking lot is going to be the retention area.
Well, same as at Loyola or at any school or any mall.
Yeah,
or,
when we remodeled Romer Park, we did the same
Yeah.
thing. I'm just saying that it's an important point, and that I drive down that road every day, several times a day, to and from work and wherever into the village, and that's a problem now. It will only get worse with a much larger parking lot. Right now, it's gravel, and it's a mixture of gravel and whatever. So the water is having some opportunities to make its way into the ground. Now it won't, if that's an asphalt plant.
But it will be contained.
It will be
a better situation.
You guys brought it up. I'm just reiterating that.
I question whether when this is installed, whether the MWRD standards are such that it will not increase at any time the burden on the storm sewer. And I don't think it does, meeting those standards.
You don't think it will?
I think it will increase the burden on the storm sewer.
But it goes into a tank that then lets it out slowly.
I got it, but that's what we also said about Loyola. And all they're doing there, the water has to go somewhere, right? And it may delay to some degree when that water is released into the storm sewer, but it will be an incremental burden.
It will be a burden, but it'll be an off-peak burden. The intent with MWRD is to prevent the surge so that the maximum capacity can be not exceeded during those times.
I mean, you have to trust that the MWRD is doing what they need to do. Additionally, in the last 20 years, they're much more stringent than they were previously, so I think it's going to be solved. I guess what it...
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
One more point?
Feel free.
If I may, and then I'm done.
Okay.
Just as a suggestion to Westmoreland, since there's several people here from the club, they might take a good example from our friends at Romer Park, the Wilmette Baseball Association. When Wilmette Baseball Association knows they're having an event that's going to require an overflow of parking, they nicely come and hand deliver a letter to all the neighbors in the general area. And I'm not that close to Romer Park. They come down to my house and say, hey, excuse us, we're going to have some overflow parking. Please be considerate, and we apologize in advance. It's a nice neighborly thing to do. Westmoreland could take a page out of that book, and when they have an event or they have a construction project that's going to overflow, I get it. There's going to be cars on the street. I'm not one of the ones that calls and complains about that. I'm not. I realize that happens. I run construction projects. I know how that happens. But that kind of a note, that kind of a message is a neighborly approach that would be well received, I'm sure, by many neighbors and lower the tensions that might be out there. Thank you. I appreciate you listening.
I guess I just have a couple of comments.
Yeah.
The last comment about roamers, they don't have that much parking, so they don't have the opportunity to expand, so they have to do that. That's not common practice for a country club to do that. Romer does it, and they have a much shorter season. And, I just have issues, You can see the lawn here, so to say that it's gravel, I mean, it's very clear a lot of it's lawn. Maybe there's a little gravel.
It's a mixture.
But in the end, do you want this to continue to see these vehicles through here? Or just to the north of the property, the house across the street, they put in arborvitae. It's much more appealing to look at that. But maybe the thing the club could do would be to take a cue from your questions about the existing trees, and maybe there's a way to shift it and say, hey, we're going to save 5 out of the 10 trees by shifting the parking lot 3 feet to the south, maybe.
Thank you. If you look at that picture in your hand, there are a whole row of beautiful coniferous trees in there. I'm just saying those might be saved rather than cutting them down. I didn't say, if you understood it that way, I'm sorry. I didn't say leave it as it is. I applaud them improving and expanding the parking. I would love to see that. I think that's a good idea. I just don't think that it should be moved into the front yard area, and I'm saying that I don't see that this is something that should be granted for that purpose. There are other opportunities there that maybe haven't been explored fully.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak either for or against this case? All right, seeing no one. Mr. Guy, if you'd like to come up and, is there any more questions for Mr. Guy? I'm sorry to make you walk up here without any other, no?
Or if you have anything
You want to respond to what he had to say? I mean,
Yeah, in terms of other areas to park, I don't know if he's familiar with the property, if he's walked through it, but, the front of the clubhouse is parking, which is not even on that drawing, so there's parking by the front door and the valet. You have number 7 Fairway and T. So, like I said, we're landlocked to the east and to the west, so I'm not sure where else these opportunities are.
Have you considered pervious surface for the parking?
Yeah, I'm assuming the engineering firm will do that.
But he's referring to our permeable pavers, yeah, as opposed to asphalt.
We just haven't got that far yet. I'm just trying to get through this process, and we'll do construction documents. I'll look into pervious pavers. I don't know what MWRD. I don't even know if we're going to have to be required to go through MWRD. I just wanted to let the village know we're going to do this right.
Mm-hmm. They'll walk you along.
Yeah.
Whether you need MWRD or not, I assume you will, but I don't know. Not an expert.
So, one question I have is, you did mention you will do some reconfiguring of what's low putting green behind, so you'll do some modification
the
there,
berm.
the berm.
Yeah.
I mean, is it possible to shift it any further so that maybe you don't need such an increase, such a setback?
We're shifting as much as we can and reshaping it without interfering with the chipping green. Yeah, we've looked at all of that, so.
What is further to the west?
I'm sorry?
What do you have further to the west on the other side of the entrance?
Asphalt parking?
No.
The
The east, I meant. The
East.
To the east, that's the service road, number 14T and Fairway, and the halfway house.
So between the service road,
The service road
goes to that
is
halfway
adjacent to
house.
the gravel lot, and the other side is the halfway house, and then number 14T.
The third green.
I have a question. Frequently when somebody comes before us, we see a very well-developed landscape plan. My concern is it's not only a question of front yard parking, but actually you're pulling in the cars. There was a lot of concern when you came before us with the neighbors with parking, and one of the comments was about headlights coming through. So by decreasing that buffer, unless that's really planted densely, we're really creating an opportunity to be shining all those headlights when the parkers are pulling in into the neighbors' houses. You don't have a developed landscape plan yet?
I think on here, they say that they're going to put them 3 feet on center.
That's correct. They'll be
That's
3
very
feet
close.
apart. and-
That's going to be real dense.
It's
It's more
really-
dense than what's existing.
Didn't see that. Your eyes are
okay.
better than mine.
And our employees
I
are
haven't had to find
arriving to work during
Say
the
how big
nighttime
they're
when
gonna
their
be?
headlights are on. So it's no different than how it operates today.
6 to 7 feet.
Yeah, but it doesn't say.
It seems to me that it'd be more dense than what's existing.
Stagger
So
those,
the
Oh, it'll be more
screening-
dense.
the
Right
screening
now,
will be more
you've got
dense.
the people of Old Glenview Road, well, he had the photo up, you can
you can
see.
see,
Right.
yeah.
You can see through, and that's going to be, I think they're going to like this now.
It'll be a
Those
wall
cars
of
showed you
arborvitae.
parking all the way up to the property line.
Not quite, but I drove it today.
No, the pictures showed cars parked right up
Yeah,
to
they
the
were
fence.
parking between the trees today,
So,
too.
yeah.
All right, any other questions or anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Guy, before we go to discussion?
No, the neighbor mentioned that maybe the current gravel lot is not within the, not meeting that 25 feet requirement. I haven't gone out there and measured it. I don't think this gravel lot, I think it goes back decades,
Yeah.
and it originally was not intended for parking, so that's probably why it doesn't meet that requirement. And over time, I think it was originally intended to be like golf course materials, bunker sand, red rock, things like that. So that's probably the reason why.
All right. Any other questions for the applicant? No. All right, thank you very much.
Okay,
I'm going to
thank you.
close the case. Ask if someone would like to make a motion here. Mr. Robke, your motion.
With regard to case 2018 Z41, move to recommend granting a request for a 17.5 front yard parking space setback variation to permit the expansion of a parking lot, 2601 Old Glenview Road, in accordance with the plan submitted.
Do I have a second? Mr. Sermon, second. Mr. Robke, your motion.
I think I can support this with the note and the expectation that the Landscape Review Committee listens and hears or reads our comments. I think that very concerned about the landscape buffer. I think with a properly landscape buffer, this can be accommodated, and I would even encourage the sacrifice of 1 or 2 parking spaces that are within this area to get some additional density to the parking, which would allow sort of a compromise coming close to some of the requirements for the landscaped islands. But whatever being done there, pushing it towards the perimeter for the sake of the neighbors and just to get areas at least with a little bit more density. But as submitted, I can approve it.
Mr. Sermon, your...
I think, it's a difficult situation. They don't have other spaces that they can expand. And right now, I think just by the disarray of the parking, I think they're losing efficiency. So I think this would be helpful. Also, I think the arborvitae will provide a nice backdrop for the street and all the people driving by. I guess I understand this is just a preliminary plan, but it might be nice to work with the whoever it is the landscape committee, and to develop something that has a little bit more interest to it. But I can support it. I think it's a good solution.
We're going to start with Mr. Colling, and then we'll work our way this way.
We have a couple of properties, in the village, Michigan Shores, Westmoreland, that are kind of oddball situations in the neighborhoods that they're in, and every time they want to do something, it's not, it is an abnormal request. I'm just, every time Michigan Shores comes up, we approve it, even though there's all these variances. And, I think what they're trying to do here is get cars off the street, kind of, create a better relationship with the neighbors. I think, maybe letting the neighbors know when you have some of these big events like 4th of July and things like that there's going to be, just an abnormal amount of traffic, might be helpful. But I can support this.
Mr. Schneider?
I have a problem with this because I don't see the hardship. I absolutely do not see the hardship. It's nice to have. There's not been an establishment that established traffic counts or whatever, that indeed this is an absolute necessity to have those additional 17 spaces at that location. And if it were absolutely necessary, I'm sure they could find other spaces. So I think here we have a case, and I think the architect, the neighbor, spoke to the standards for variation very explicitly. There is no hardship here, and it's a nice-to-have thing, and we should not do this because of that.
Ms. Norick, do you have any comments you want to add?
I was just hoping the Appearance Commission also will be reviewing, and maybe there are opportunities to preserve some existing trees. It's hard to tell exactly where they are, if they all have to come down or if there's some that could potentially be retained.
So, I was looking at this similarly to Mr. Colling because, this is a commercial use essentially, or in a residential district. So when we were looking at a front yard setback, we're applying the residential front yard setback thinking to this property. And, you look at other commercial properties, a mall, I guess, is not a good idea because that's designed from the ground up as opposed to trying to figure out space. But I think that commercial use, you look at the front yard setback differently than you would if this was a house. So to have the cars coming, 7 or 8 feet from the property line isn't that unreasonable.
In commercial properties.
The commercial property, so I understand that that's a little bit close, but Old Glenview Road is a little bit of a busy road, and they're talking about screening the cars. So, you won't really know how close those cars are. I think to the hardship argument, when we heard their case for the paddle hut, people came and complained about all the parking in the street, that it's a inconvenience to them.
The hardship is off-site.
Yeah, so the hardship really is in the neighborhood as opposed to on the property. So to try and pull some of those cars out of the neighborhood is a benefit to that community.
We have not heard one piece of evidence that it is a burden on the adjacent streets and that they need the 17 spaces for that purpose. We have had no evidence to that.
But when we were doing the paddle courts, people came and complained about the parking on the streets.
They did, and they complained about the noise.
I think, like Chairman Duffy, I'm going back to the testimony that was presented by the neighbors on the paddle court case, where there were a lot of people complaining about the event parking and the shortage of event parking. And the representative from the club at that time said they were going to try to increase the parking. So I think it minimizes the hardship on the community. And I was torn. I started with the same position that you said.
That's what we chuckled about.
Where's the hardship?
Said it, he goes, that's my argument usually.
And, I sort of projected, and as others have pointed out, that it's such a unique property, that the application, and, I think with proper landscaping, nobody's going to know it's there if it's done right. And if it gets 17 or 20 cars more off the street on those big event days, I would expect, so long as there's not headlights shining into, and I know somebody lives right across from there, and they don't want, the headlights, with proper screening, I think it'll be a win-win that might be accomplished here. But I recognize and started from the same position of what's the hardship when you have all this land you can't find somewhere else.
I just, because I remember them saying that they were going to eventually turn this into parking when they came with the paddle huts. And so I feel like this is kind of phase 2 in a way of that original discussion that we had with them. I didn't know they were going to need a variance, but I can see why it's beneficial. An additional 17 to 19 cars on the site, off the street, and if you can't really see them, then is there really an impact other than less cars on the street? Anybody else want comments? No? All right, why don't we take a vote?
Mr. Robke?
Yes.
Mr. Sermon?
Yes.
Mr. Colang,
Yes.
Ms. Norick,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider,
No.
Chairman Duffy.
Chair votes yes as well. That's going to go as a positive recommendation of the village board. September 25th, the meeting. I suggest you here, but it's probably going to, I suggest you attend, but it's probably going to be on the consent agenda, which will happen in the first 15 minutes of the meeting. If you could come up, Mr. Guy, and sign one of these and take the other with you, I thank you in advance. Can I have someone make a...
I move to authorize the chairman to prepare the report and recommendation for the Zoning Board of Appeals for case number 2018-Z41.
Second.
All in favor? Aye as well.
Three.
All right, thanks for watching. We're all done. When you're ready.
Our next case is 2018-Z38, 3232 Lake Avenue, Suite 330. This is a request for a special use for a medical clinic large to permit a pediatric center.
Good job.
Just brought a bigger version of what's in your packet.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, welcome.
I'm Bob. You're coming around this way. Okay. Good evening. I'm Bob Fink, and this is Paul Fitzpatrick. We're with 11 East Partners, and we're here tonight with representatives from North Shore University Health System on behalf of Eden's Plaza, seeking a special use permit to allow for a medical clinic operated by North Shore University Health to locate in the approximately 35,000 two-story premises formerly occupied by Carson's Furniture. A large medical use requires a special use for the first floor. It's permitted by right on the second floor, but a special use is required for the second floor. Eden's first floor. Eden's Plaza's ownership group, and I checked this because I wasn't sure I believed it myself, and then I started remembering it was even scarier. It's almost 25-year history of working together responsibly with the village and the community to assure that Eden's Plaza maintains its place as one of the premier destinations on the North Shore. Also, North Shore University Health System also has a long-standing relationship with the community. Key staff members and physicians live in the community, and approximately 45% of the village residents have previously sought care at one of the facilities. Both the first and second floor of the premises, should you approve the use, will be devoted to medical office uses for pediatric care. You have our formal application in front of you, which discusses how we believe our request conforms to the village standards for special use. But tonight we also wanted to take a moment, and given the time I'll try to be brief, to explain why we believe this request is critical to the success of Eden's Plaza moving forward. As you all know, Bonton, the parent company of Carson's, filed for bankruptcy earlier in the year. And they're in the process of closing all their stores. The store at Eden's Plaza closed on August 28th, and we're now in possession of the premises. Eden's Plaza currently consists of approximately 340,000 square feet of building area on 20 acres of land. The two-story furniture store occupied about 10% of the gross leasable area. Happily, for the past few years, Eden's Plaza has enjoyed a 95% occupancy rate. But I think we can all remember back a few years ago when we too had to deal with significant vacancy on the north end. We were able to fill those vacancies primarily because together, ownership in the village took a chance on adding what at that time was a non-traditional use, the Big Blue Swim School, to our tenant mix. The success of that family-oriented traffic that they brought to the end of that end of the center allowed us to lease up all the vacancies on the north end to retail tenants. However, not all the shopping centers have been that fortunate. I'm sure you've all seen examples as you drive from neighborhood to neighborhood. During the last few years, the retail landscape has seen a rash of store closings, causing most centers to deal with an ever-growing vacancy rate. Big box stores, 15,000 square feet and above, have been where the biggest and most dramatic impact is being felt. And two-story premises have been the most difficult to release. Please understand, ownership continues to view and is committed to retail being the focal point of Eden's as we move into the future. That said, I think everyone fully understands that ongoing vacancy causes shopping centers to stagnate and decay. The reduction in the amount of retailers, especially big box users, has caused landlords across the country to take a different look at how to deal with the surge in vacancies and keep their centers vibrant in order to ensure the success of their other retailers. This has resulted in the incorporation of different synergistic uses to office, medical, entertainment, hotels, schools, and residential uses are going into the mix to drive traffic and turn their properties into go-to destinations, and very importantly, to help attract new retailers to their centers. Fortunately, if you grant us our requested special use, Edens Plaza will not suffer the fate of many other centers dealing with these vacancies for an extended amount of time. And quickly filling the 2-story big box vacancy with North Shore, we've secured a first-in-class quality tenant who will bring energy and traffic to the center, as well as help to better serve the medical needs of the community. Adding this medical component into the mix will bring in new customers and visitors to the center as well. Once they discover Edens Plaza and its other offer, these people will come back again and again to visit our retailers. Quickly, and most importantly, quickly filling this vacancy sends an important signal to the retail community. That message is that Edens Plaza is not in decline, but rather is rapidly moving forward, adding vitality and energy to the center. I'm sure you all heard the 3 biggest keys in retail development is location, location, location. Well, in this climate, that old adage holds truer than ever. Today, retailers only look to locate where the action is. At any sign of decay or stagnation, they will look for greener pastures. We truly believe that the addition of North Shore to Edens Plaza is critical to helping to assure that Edens Plaza is the go-to destination and is well positioned to continue and prosper and remain a key component of the village's commercial base. We thank you for your time. Here with other members of our team to answer any questions you may have.
So I have a quick question for you. So understanding that the special use really is for the first floor, and looking at the plans of the first and second floor, it's rather vague. There's nothing labeled. Can you tell us what's going on the first floor?
First floor is here.
Understand.
And the second floor, and this is just shows where it lays over on the plan. Both floors will be dedicated to medical office use for pediatric care.
All right, so let me take a step back. Where are you in the process?
We have a signed lease with them.
You have a signed lease subject to the special use? All right, so what we have in front of us here are drawings of the first and second floor, but nothing's really labeled. Can you explain to us what's happening in this space? Pediatric care, what's happening in this space?
You mind if I?
Absolutely, yeah.
And again, I apologize, the plans may not be as fully drawn out, but you can imagine no one wanted to spend that much money until we knew where we were going.
Fully understand, just, we need to, yeah, I mean, yeah,
I get it.
yeah. So,
Good evening, I'm Sean O'Grady, the Chief Clinical Operations Officer at North Shore. Happy to be here tonight to talk to you about our plans for this space.
Hi, welcome.
This is intended to be a destination center that attracts patients from well beyond the North Shore to this location for specialty pediatric care. So specialty pediatric physicians, neurologists, neurosurgeons, oncologists, go through the whole litany of specialists. We'll see patients on both the first and second floor, as well as primary care pediatricians. An MRI is planned for the site, as well as some basic diagnostic services to allow a seamless and easy experience for families in our community.
So, so surgery taking place, but no surgery. So this is just basically meeting with your doctor pre-post treatment, like surgery or.
The primary use will be physician office visits. There will be some infusion provided to chronic pediatric patients, those with cancer, as well as other neurological disorders, but minimal procedures will be performed in the facility.
Okay. Do we have any other questions?
I
Physical
guess
therapy,
just
occupational therapy.
Occupational therapy as
Physical
well.
therapy.
All right.
And I don't remember from the plan, is there a drop-off area in the front currently?
Currently, no.
Okay. Are you going to propose to
We're
have?
going to work with the tenants over the
Okay.
iteration.
So,
iteration, yes.
So do you see many of the people coming in, the patients and the parents coming in where they would need a drop-off? I'm just looking at, is it going to cause any traffic congestion?
Speak for himself. We're just going to do better at calling out where the entrance is. I don't think there's not going to be an overhang for drop-off or anything like that.
Yeah.
These will be primarily well and mobile families. So given the parking situation.
Adjacent, you don't see, okay.
That is a significant issue.
Okay.
So how many physicians do you think will be in the building at any point in time seeing patients?
We think that on peak days there would be around 15 doctors in the setting, and then various staff doing other ancillary procedure, follow-up, testing, those types
So
of
what would
things.
the total staff be?
Yeah.
Total staff, I think, would be around 35.
Plus the doctors, or 35 including?
Probably about 40 total if you include the doctors. I mean, those are peak days.
Yeah.
Every day will not be 100% occupied. It just depends on the physician rotation
Okay.
schedule.
Now, did does the shopping center tell you that you'll have 40 spaces available to use, or?
They're common spaces. There's no exclusive spaces.
Okay.
So are you adding elevators to this?
There's elevators there today.
Existing?
Existing elevators they'll be reusing, and if they want to, they can add elevators, but they're existing elevators in the premises.
Is it 2 of them? Is that what I see on the drawing? In the process of your search for a tenant, how many opportunities presented themselves prior to this medical use?
This was not a surprise that we got Carson's back.
Right.
So we haven't just started marketing this.
Right.
We took this to ICSC in New York last December, quietly. We took it to ICSC a lot more vocally. At the end of May in Las Vegas, shows in Chicago. We've talked to probably 15 to 20 retailers, including other furniture stores. The trouble is a 2-story space, very difficult in today's market. We do think, the elephant out of the room, going forward, there are other large format retailers that could locate on a first floor, would be bigger size than this first floor, as we go forward.
You've got other space available.
Well, actually, you don't, do you?
I don't yet, but we hope to soon.
So even though, I'm sorry, this is going to be a side. I mean, even though Carson's owns their own building, you guys manage the building for them?
No. Carson's owns their own building. We manage the shopping center.
Right.
There's an REA that controls it. We think we're in very good position. They're in the process of selling all their assets.
Right.
And we think we're well positioned to get the department store.
Okay. Any other questions about this use?
Yeah, so the separate ownership relies, all of the parking is common area?
All the
Part of
parking-
your ownership, and that's part of the
Yeah, and it's
reciprocal
all
operating agreement?
All
is
controlled by
that-
an REA.
Okay.
But this building that this tenant is
No,
going into is
This one,
owned.
they own. No, I was only
right,
worried about
right.
the control of the
Right,
parking
Okay.
and the impact and whether a
And we-
future
and-
use
and
could
we
try to
manage- and
claim
we
some
manage
of that other parking, but that's in your interest to make sure that doesn't happen anyway.
I imagine the Carson's property had probably 10 employees at a time or something like that. The furniture store itself may have had 8 or 10 employees.
That's probably right.
So then you're adding just high 20s, 30. Okay.
All right. Are any other questions? No? Wow, this is a lot easier than I thought it was going to be.
Time was in our favor.
I think it was all in the presentation.
Yeah.
Wear
All right.
this down with the
Is
other
there anybody in
ones.
the audience that would like to speak either for or against this case? All right. Seeing no one, I'm going to close case. I'm going to ask if there's a member of the board who'd like to make a motion here. I was going to throw it at Ms. Norick.
Because then I'd have to speak first, so that I don't want to speak first.
Okay. Mr. Robke's motion. Thank you very much.
With regard to the cases cut off, case 2018 Z38, move to recommend granting a request for special use for medical clinic large to permit a pediatric center, 3232 Lake Avenue, number 330. In accordance with the plan submitted, the zoning board must determine if the special use should run with the land or with the use.
It'll run with the use. Yep. Is there a second? All right. No, Mr. Schneider, your second. You were too quick.
Not a case of hardship. Special use. Happy to see the vacancy filled, would love to see retail. Maybe you can sell something so we can get some tax revenue. But I think the comments that the worst thing that can happen with a retail center, and I've been involved in a lot of retail developments, is vacancies, and they can suck the life out of the center very quickly. So I think this is positive for the community as an asset and positive for Eden's Plaza to keep it as viable, particularly given the the pending situation with a much larger vacancy and the challenges that will be there. I can support this case as being consistent with the plans for the community.
Mr. Schneider?
I agree. I think it will generate, even though there's not much retail sales, but it will generate traffic.
Yes.
And I know, having used the adjacent, what is it called, Blue something? Big Blue, that I've taken advantage of the restaurants and other shopping opportunities in the center. So I think this will aid the other businesses as well.
Mr. Colling?
Yeah, I think, it would be nice if it was retail, but given what's going on with shopping centers around the country, prolonged vacancies would be a true negative. Obviously, this is a tremendous client that's coming in. It's a service business, but well-known and filling a niche and going to generate other traffic, which should benefit the other retailers. And so I think getting somebody in there quickly is a great, you guys have done a great job doing that, and I think that's going to be a real benefit to the center on an overall basis, so I can support it.
Mr. Sermon?
I think it previously being a furniture store, there wasn't that much of a draw on the number of people, and I really think that this use would be a great frequency generator to get people into the facility, to get into the mall, to be able to use the other spaces. So I think it will add a lot of vibrancy to the mall itself, even though it isn't retail.
Okay. Ms. Norick, anything to
I
add?
agree, and I think it's actually very complementary with the adjacent nearby retail, with the Big Blue Swim School, and then the smaller restaurants right around there. It's perfect.
All right, I'm a little bit surprised nobody from the neighborhood came and complained about the possible increase in traffic that's going to happen, which I don't really think.
What neighborhood?
So I too. When I heard about this initially, I thought, for the landlords, phenomenal tenant, walking in the door, excellent use of difficult space, and if I was the landlord, I'd be all over this as well, trying to get this done. So from the other side, though, from the zoning side, I really felt like the special use request was absolutely reasonable, and I thought that this meets our standards of review because, it really is a benefit to not just the mall as from an operational side, but I think from traffic, from a complementary use to what's existing in the space. We all know that service businesses are really starting to take over some of these retail spaces, big and small. It's what's driving occupancy these days. And so just all around, I thought this was a good use, despite a lack of sales tax revenue. But I still think, there may be some ancillary increase for the service businesses that exist, the restaurants and the salons, et cetera, that are already in the space. So I thought this was a great use, and I could see how I would support it as well. So why don't we take a vote?
Mr. Rupke?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Colling?
Yes.
Ms. Norick?
Yes.
Mr. Sermon?
Yes.
Chairman Duffy?
Chair votes yes as well. So there's a positive recommendation to the village board. Village board meeting's on the 25th of September in this room, 7 o'clock, I believe, they do their meeting. Thank you very much. Can I have someone make...
I'll move to authorize the
Thank
chairman to
you.
prepare the report and recommendation for the zoning board of appeals for case number 2018 Z38.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye as well.
And that one's
Thank you. Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Move to approve the minutes for the zoning board of
Thank you.
appeals for Wednesday, July 18th, 2018.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
As well. Okay, microphone's open for public comment. Nobody's rushing up. I'm going to close that. Excuse me, and we will adjourn the meeting.
That's part.